Ukraine strikes back. Putin's army in ruins. Trump said it. The counteroffensive is on. Russian lines are collapsing and panic grips the Kremlin. Trump's shocking words echo worldwide. Ukraine is ready to attack. Ukrainian drones, tanks, and warriors are tearing through the occupiers. Battalions wiped out, generals fleeing, and Moscow losing control by the hour. The front is on fire. The Russia's downfall has just begun. Let's talk about it. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Maria Farafonova, and here are the latest news. US President Donald Trump stated that Ukraine is eager to launch an offensive on the battlefield against Russia. He added that he will soon speak with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to discuss the ongoing war.
I'll be talking to him about the war, and we'll discuss what, as I understand it, they want to go on the offensive. I'll make a decision on that. They would like to start an offensive, you know that, and we're going to have to make a decision.
He also called on Russian President Vladimir Putin to stop killing Ukrainians and Russians as well. According to him, Russia has lost 1.5 million people in the war, mostly soldiers.
They should have won this war in the first week, and now it's already in its fourth year.
Meanwhile, our defenders are ripping the occupiers apart on the front line. The enemy rolled heavy armor to the front, only to drive straight into a deadly ambush.
They figured the weather had turned, the kind when cheap, simple FPVs won't fly. And it's those cheap FPVs that largely hold up our defense. The Russians decided the long autumn rains had set in when FPVs hardly fly. So they tried to advance not in small groups like cockroaches, but to form up for the motherland and roll their armor forward again.
The Russians jumped the gun. The weather is on our defenders' side and still allows the use of strike drones. As a result, those Russian attempts were repelled and the enemy was utterly crushed. Ukrainian troops are pushing forward in Donetsk. The front is on fire. According to deep state analysts, the defense forces have driven Russian units back near two key villages in the Pokrovsk area. The battles here are brutal, but Ukrainian warriors are holding firm, reclaiming ground and fortifying every meter. Meanwhile, the enemy is pressing towards Zaporizhzhia. The tension is rising by the hour. The fight for control is intensifying. Full details of the dramatic frontline developments are coming up next.
Zaporizhzhia direction. Drones from the 422nd Separate Battalion of Unmanned Systems, Luftwaffe, are destroying a mobile Terek radar station. This is not an isolated incident. In this direction, Ukrainian drones are destroying a huge amount of the aggressor's equipment. The Partisan resistance group Atesh reports that the Russian army is having major problems with air defense systems there.
Our sources in the air defense units of the occupying forces on the Zaporizhzhia front report a catastrophic state of their equipment. Sanctions, missile strikes by Ukraine's defense forces on repair facilities, and manufacturing defects have led to the mass failure of anti-aircraft systems, including the TOR-SAM systems. Due to a severe shortage of operational systems, the occupiers are forced to use tractors to tow the launchers into position. This practice makes the equipment extremely vulnerable and turns these expensive systems into easy targets. Atesh.
The Russian army does not count its losses, as it is trying to get closer to Zaporizhzhia in order to strike the city and the logistics hub. And the city, with a population of over 500,000, is only a few dozen kilometers away.
The situation will get worse. We have already seen bomb strikes on the city, and Russia is trying to get close enough to launch attacks with drones as well. Currently, the distance from Russian-controlled territory to Zaporizhzhia is about 35 kilometers. And every 5 kilometers will worsen the situation for the local population and for army logistics. Michael Koman, military analyst.
To hold back the enemy and inflict unacceptable losses on them, Ukraine now needs military aid more than ever. Already this week, Finland will deliver a new package of military aid. Lithuania, Estonia, and the Netherlands will also provide funds for the purchase of additional weapons for Ukraine. And this is far from a complete list. All of this is within the framework of the Pearl program. This is the purchase of American weapons with funds from NATO partners. On October 15th, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth arrived in Brussels and demanded more weapons for Ukraine. At the meeting of NATO defense ministers and the session of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, Ramstein, he called on allies to allocate more funds for the purchase of American weapons. He emphasized that the Pearl Initiative is aimed at bringing peace to this conflict.
You achieve peace when you are strong, not when you use strong words or wag your finger in threat. You achieve this when you have strong and real capabilities that are respected by your adversaries. I believe that is exactly what NATO is doing. I believe that is exactly what the Pearl Initiative is about, which is why today we expect more countries to donate even more, to acquire even more, in order to equip Ukraine for a peaceful resolution of this conflict. Pete Hackstead, head of the Pentagon.
As winter approaches, the Russians have returned to the tactic of mechanized assaults, especially in the Donetsk direction. This video shows drone operators from the 93rd Mechanized Brigade destroying the occupiers' armored vehicles. However, due to worsening weather conditions in the Donetsk region, the use of strike drones is becoming more difficult. The Russians are trying to take advantage of this, for example, to capture Vladimirovka and Sofiivka. These are small villages in the Donbass. During the offensive, they used 6 tanks, nearly 40 armored fighting vehicles, and 40 pieces of motorized equipment.
Russian troops tried to break through the defense forces' lines, sending in equipment and infantry wave after wave. In the first echelon, mobile groups on motorcycles operated, followed by tanks and armored vehicles carrying airborne command troops.
According to the Ukrainian analytical portal Deep State, the Russian army's offensive in Ukraine has slowed down by almost half since September. One of the most important factors behind the failure of the Russian army's offensive actions is the supply of weapons from our Western partners. That is why, for Ukraine, the initiative within the framework of the NATO countries' Pearl program for purchasing American weapons is very important right now.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Russian generals boast of victories on paper, but the battlefield tells a different story. Ukrainian forces are holding key positions and supply lines steadily moving forward despite relentless assaults. The occupiers are being ground down in a devastating war of attrition. The Kremlin hides its mounting losses as its troops are forced to retreat across multiple fronts. For the full picture of what's really happening on the front line, watch now.
Time is no longer on the Kremlin side, and in a prolonged standoff, Ukraine's chances of winning the war are much higher than Putin's. This is the conclusion reached by Western journalists who visited the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces.
Ukraine's carefully considered and meticulously executed strategy in the ongoing and brutal war of attrition, a conflict defined by sustained combat and the gradual wearing down of opposing forces, is now demonstrably showing a series of truly unexpected and quite significant results.
Constant enemy losses and the adaptation of the Ukrainian armed forces to modern combat tactics, analysts assert, are opening up opportunities for Kyiv's long-term victory. Russia was counting on a rapid advance in northeastern Ukraine. However, key cities and logistical hubs remain under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. By the fall of 2025, Russian generals are capturing Ukrainian towns and villages only in words and in fake reports for the man in the bunker.
It is clear that the Russian army is unlikely to be able to accomplish these tasks. But General Gerasimov, the chief of the General Staff, according to certain leaks that have appeared on social media, reported to Putin about the latest successes of the Russian troops. In particular, he claimed that the grouping of Ukrainian armed forces near the Lebenbek Reservoir had been destroyed, which is not true. And in addition, he stated that Russian troops are clearing the southern districts of the city of Kupiansk, which is also not true.
What is actually happening in the long-suffering but still unyielding Kupiansk was shown by the operators of the 8th Special Operations Forces Regiment. The enemy in this direction truly does not stop trying to break through the Ukrainian defenses. In the Kupiansk direction, there were at least 8 attempted attacks by the occupiers over the past day. However, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to thwart the enemy's plans to advance. The defense forces repelled assault actions in the areas of Petropavlivka, Novoplatonivka, Pischanove, and Stepova Novoselivka. Using strike FPV drones, the occupiers were driven into the nearest building, after which the operators cleared several structures where the enemy had taken up positions. The occupiers are also having a tough time today in the Zaporizhzhia direction. There, partisans from the Atesh movement helped destroy a mobile enemy command post. Concerned citizens provided the exact coordinates of the occupiers' communications vehicle, which was being used as a mobile command post to control enemy units. The destruction of this communications hub caused chaos in the occupiers' command system. Coordination between units and the transmission of orders were disrupted, which seriously affected the enemy's combat capability in this sector of the front. And here are the images of a burning fuel and lubricants depot belonging to the occupiers in the northern Slobozhanshchina direction. In the past few days, our border guards have managed to destroy enemy hideouts and communication equipment. In addition, the enemy in the northern Slobozhanshchina direction has also suffered personnel losses. Overall, in this and the Kursk directions, Ukrainian defenders repelled 7 Russian attacks. The enemy carried out several airstrikes on our positions, dropping a total of 9 guided bombs and conducting 198 artillery shellings. The situation remains difficult in the Lyman direction. There, the enemy attacked 12 times, attempting to advance near the settlements of Srednya, Novoselivka and Derilova. Nevertheless, a special unit of Ukrainian military intelligence is managing to accurately and effectively destroy enemy forces, their equipment and drones. Due to heavy losses in this and other directions, Russian forces have been forced to slow down their offensive pace, military analysts explain.
As a result, Russian activity on the front decreased somewhat in September. The number of assaults they carry out drops in direct proportion to their personnel losses.
The official Ukrainian statistics also do little to encourage the occupiers to launch these meat grinder assaults. Thus, September 2020 stood out as a showcase moment for the effectiveness of National Guard units. It was a particularly telling period for the performance of the National Guard units. Thanks to the coordinated efforts of the guardsmen, the enemy lost at least 677 vehicles, 418 artillery systems, nearly 200 radar stations, 17 multiple rocket launchers, 29 tanks, and almost 70 ammunition depots over the past month. Meanwhile, the Russian army continues to strike exclusively at civilians and residential buildings. And it should be noted that this is happening not only in Ukraine. Recently, Russia's much-vaunted air defense system hit a residential building in the Belgorod region with a missile. The video shows the upper floors of the apartment building taking the hit. As a result, according to Russian media, windows were blown out in 15 apartments. 24 parked cars were damaged, and officially, there were no casualties. However, judging by the footage published online, the destruction of the building may be much more serious.
The front shows no mercy. Putin's army is collapsing in plain sight. Ukrainian forces are smashing through enemy lines, obliterating entire battalions and leaving nothing but smoke and ruins behind. Commanders are fleeing, soldiers are surrendering, and Russia's so-called might has turned to rubble and fire. Panic is spreading through the Kremlin as they scramble to throw yet another wave of volunteers into the flames. What fate awaits them on Ukrainian soil? Discover the full story in our next report.
If no one helps you, you'll have to crawl out on your own after a while. They sent us, it turned out, to prison. They talked about the fortress. No, I don't have legs anymore.
From September 19th to October 3rd alone, the Russian army lost more than 1,000 people in the war in Ukraine.
I don't know if I can make it. I don't know. I'll try to crawl out. I had to walk about 20 kilometers. My head is spinning.
Russia's losses are terrible. The economy is bursting at the seams, but Putin is ready to make even greater sacrifices. Now, in a harsh manner, they're even demanding that businesses help with recruiting people for the front.
Just private hospitality. That is, he won't come. It knows that people won't support it, and that their city could become famous for this.
Independent journalists, using open sources, have identified the names of 134,125 Russian soldiers who died during the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This data allows us to track a kind of pulse of the war. When the Kremlin didn't spare its own people and launched massive assaults for the sake of capturing another village in Ukraine.
Our commanders make unreasonable decisions, sending us to certain death. There are just so many different kinds of deadly threats there. There are FPV drones and Baba Yaga drones. All kinds of weapons are being used, mortars, artillery. And there's no cover at all. They just send us out into the open. And now the guys are digging their own graves.
In the first year and a half, the casualty chart looked like a roller coaster. That was during the Russian assault on Bakhmut and Avdiivka.
You could always see a holiday at the gates. The Angel of Light will introduce you. The enemy is already too scared to even bark.
The Russian Ministry of Defense, led back then by Shoigu, was burying 100 to 150 people a day. Sometimes the numbers dropped to 50 to 60 killed per day.
Since
October 23rd, the curve has remained consistently high. It only dips below 120 in rare cases. And the recent dips on the charts are explained not by the rescue of Russian troops, but by the time needed to verify and process new obituaries.
Our guys went through hell in captivity. Numerous tortures and abuses. Most have shrapnel wounds and concussions, fractures that healed without medical intervention, and one of them is missing a leg. They all need medical help to go through the military medical commission and ultimately a leave, but instead, these sick men are being sent back to the front lines.
In terms of geography, Bashkortostan and Tatarstan lead in the number of their citizens killed in the war. Here, local volunteers help identify the deceased.
In our area, over 15 years, during the war in Afghanistan, there were maybe 3 or 4 people killed. And now, just take a moment to look at what is truly happening all around us. Everything, absolutely everything, is completely covered in flags.
A special category is the volunteers, those who signed a contract back in 2022. Right now, they make up almost a third of all identified casualties, 29%.
It turns out that's just one particular side. That's indeed the main factory for 2 distinct purposes. They've started a new burial site.
The Kremlin is disposing of those who went to war voluntarily, who fell for the propaganda. Prisoners make up the second largest casualty category. They account for 14%. Some of the dead are officially listed as volunteers, not as convicts.
Today, there are those in places of confinement who love their families. There's a good chance this is proven by those who signed contracts from places like Rosnovoban.
Mobilized soldiers make up 11% of the list. This figure is understated because obituaries often conceal their status.
Do you understand? The families understand? For everyone who shouldn't be shot, you have to hide their status to protect those who are being hidden. Mention a couple of 500ers. Just mention them right there. According to martial law, this is not an order.
One of the important categories of losses is Russian officers who knowingly went to kill Ukrainians for the sake of medals on their chests. Journalists have counted 5,847 dead. And that's with exact names, including about 150 colonels and as many as 12 generals.
We lived, we existed, but not here, all of us. We rejoiced, we grieved, and then boom. And the guys went off to die.
For the Russian army, this is a painful blow because their entire system relies precisely on officers. They coordinate the interaction of different units and accordingly give joint orders for strikes on Ukraine. So what are the real numbers?
Actually, our Putin got involved in this. People have died. Didn't you get the message? The message is, as they say, to raise your time.
What can be seen from open sources covers only 45 to 65% of the actual losses. So the list of 134,000 is just the tip of the iceberg, which Putin is desperately trying to hide. Currently, Ukraine counts over 1,100,000 Russian losses. This list includes both the wounded and the missing. Even the so-called LDNR stopped publishing data about their losses since December 2022. In fact, according to statements by the BBC and Mediazona, the number of Russian military killed could exceed 300,000. This does not include the bodies that still remain on the battlefield. The number is truly enormous.
The flags are hanging. In general, there are a lot. Guys, there will be a huge number of dead. They tell me that when we finally learn the whole truth about their numbers, the entire country will be shocked.
The Russian army, which has already lost hundreds of thousands of people, continues to fight. So-called volunteers and convicts are filling the personnel shortages. Officers are dying faster than they can be trained. And now the death statistics have become the main indicator of success for the world's second army.
What do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments, like the video and stay informed about the main headlines. More to come.